Welcome to Pegwarmers. I'm Kevin, and I'm here to talk about toys. Today, we're talking about the April Fool's Toy Show, better known as the Delaware Show to people in the know. Twice a year, people in my collecting circle talk about the Delaware Show. The April edition is called April Fool's Toy Show. Twice a year, this toy show held at the Nurse Shrine Center in Delaware is an awesome vending hall full of great stuff. This show does cater a little bit more towards older collectors. There's a little bit more die cast and things like that than some toy shows, but it definitely has a ton of 70s and 80s and even 90s action figures, plus a little bit of modern sprinkled in there because you can't keep it out. I got there in time to wait just a few minutes in the early buyer line. Obviously, I wasn't at the front of that line, but that's okay. You go to one door, grab your wristband, come back to be allowed in. There are two rooms. One large room is sort of like an auditorium with a stage. The other room is a smaller vendor room that maybe is more of like a small group room. You know, I don't know how they do the various events that are held at this place that are for its initial function, right? Not just rented out space. But the smaller room, you know, is like maybe like a classroom or a conference room. Yeah, like it's large, but you know, it's sort of that size versus like an auditorium size room. I would say this is sort of about the size of like a firehouse show. Maybe just a little bit bigger than that because it's got the two rooms. I often refer to like hotel ballroom, firehouse, and then like convention center. So I'm going to say this is on the upper side of the firehouse style shows. One of the tables I like to check out early on in the show is run by Ben Leach. He has some weird stuff in his collection, and so when he's parting with stuff, I like to check it out. He had some pretty cool Mighty Max inspired playsets. The Sonic Adventures, Sammy Steele vs. the Micro Mob. Trapped on Face Mountain, Sammy Steele. And he also had Mighty Max Squishes the Fly. All these carded, pretty cool sets. There's pretty much always a modern Mego vendor at this show, and I just am always kind of blown away by the range of that line. Oh, I loved these knockoff figures I found. Classic character series Hercules. The artwork does look like Kevin Sorbo a little bit there, but these are not the legendary Journey of Hercules action figures. I try to kind of race through everything and check out both rooms early on just to see what I can see before the place starts to fill up. So I did pop over into the second room, and I found this action figure. I don't know what it is. I didn't go to the trouble of Google lensing it. It had a Battle-matic action where you push the lever on its back and the arm would move. It reminded me a lot of Jackalman from Thundercats, but it seemed kind of like a knockoff, but I don't really know. Maybe it is a more popular figure than I'm aware of. One of the vendors had a new Adventures of Tartarus figure sealed, and it was autographed, but I could not figure out who signed it. Maybe it's the voice actor for the character, or somebody that worked on the Jetlag Masters of the Universe show. I'm not really sure. It was sitting right next to this Greatest Gruesome Match 2-pack that made me think about an upcoming episode that I need to edit. One of the vendors had this amazing Mickey's Christmas Carol set, just like, I assume, the entire line. I don't know if there were more characters than that. It's pretty cool. It definitely crossed my mind. This would have been a very splurge kind of purchase because it's not something I'm collecting. But I do like toys based around the Christmas specials like Frosty and Rudolph, and Mickey's Christmas Carol is amazing. Around this time, the general admission doors had opened and the place really started to fill up. I did check out the stage right away. There's a vendor there that I don't see at too many other shows that I used to be able to get G.I. Joe parts off pretty cheap. So I definitely kind of booked it over to his booth. I did buy some stuff. His prices did go up some, but I can't really fault him because I've been getting great deals on G.I. Joe accessories for years from him. And I still didn't think they were outrageous. They just were, you know, more in line with what everyone's trying to get for stuff these days. I don't know if I'm actually crossing anything off my list with these, but I picked up a Bats backpack because you can always use accessories for army builders. I picked up a helmet that I thought was to Tan Clutch or Tan Grunt, but now that I'm looking at it, I kind of wonder if it's Tiger Force Duke. I'm going to have to look at this more carefully. I got Disseminator's helmet. He is the driver to the Cobra Hammerhead water vehicle. He's a figure that is a cool-looking army builder, but without his helmet, he can't really do his function. You know, like it's having like Secto Viper without the dome. It doesn't really work out. I also picked up an Army Ants gun from that same vendor. And if you guys have been watching, you know that I recently picked up a big lot of Army Ants. Some with accessories and some without. So those were my 4 items I grabbed off the stage in my first swoop around. There was a guy in the secondary room, the smaller room, that had some like vintage clothing that was like pop culture related. And I looked at that because, you know, if there was vintage G.I. Joe or He-Man stuff, I might consider grabbing it, even though it wouldn't fit me. But he had this Batman Returns sweatshirt. It said Diesel Series Catwoman, and man, the artwork was very buxom. I mean, not to say Michelle Pfeiffer isn't a gorgeous woman, but this artwork was a little bit over the top, and I thought it was pretty funny. Like I had mentioned, this show tends to steer a little bit older in selection than some shows I go to, and there was a Mr. Machine toy there, a true classic. This is a toy by the Ideal Company. It's like a STEM toy before STEM toys existed. That vendor also had some trolls, which I've always got a sweet spot for trolls. I'm not collecting trolls. I do have a few. I don't want more. But it's always fun to see troll dolls out and about. And not the ones from the modern movie. I spent some time talking to my buddy Chris Lamont. Gorilla Boys Toys is one of the vendors that, you know, I see at almost every show I go to. And Chris is, you know, a dear friend at this point. We've known each other for years. He was one of the big buyers at my estate sale that I did at my house before I sold that place. And he knows that I'm looking for some movie-related figures for, you know, future projects. He helped me out with a couple Men in Black figures. We were getting ready to do that one. He's just sort of pulling movie-related toys and letting me take a look through them. Because I don't really know what we're going to shoot eventually. You know, Tony and Ryan and I want to try and do a lot of those 90s movie toy lines and things like that. But it depends on when we have what we feel like is the completest collection we're going to get for that. You know, sometimes we're missing 1 or 2 things. Because do we really want to own everything? How much money do we want to sink into making an episode if we're doing it more for the episode than for like someone's personal collection? You know, we're lucky Ryan's really into a lot of these toy lines. He has a lot of them already. But I have a feeling Dick Tracy will happen someday. We keep talking about it. And I have a loose Dick Tracy figure. But I figured I should start grabbing some of the loose figures because they're not that expensive. And, you know, Ryan tends to grab carded examples of stuff. But it's also nice to have some of them loose. It'd be great to have all their accessories, but I'm not too worried about that. So these are the Playmates Dick Tracy guys. They're sculpted in sort of the same format as the Ninja Turtles figures. So I picked up Lips, Sam Catchem, the only other good guy in the line, I think. Big Boy, the kind of main villain. Influence, and Prune Face. Some of these guys don't look all that different. Like Prune Face and Influence, they're kind of similar. They both have wrinkly foreheads. Prune Face obviously has way more wrinkles. And they have different colored hair and different colored suits and stuff. But I think this is a line that's going to be tricky for me to keep track of who I have. So I'm probably going to have to put together some sort of a checklist to help me out if I am going to attempt to get most of them loose. I don't know if we're going to end up getting some carded ones. I know somebody who has most of the collection on card. Maybe could borrow those. We'll see what happens down the road. This is not on the, like, next up to shoot kind of list. The same vendor that had the great collection of Mickey's Christmas Carol toys also had some awesome Supernaturals figures, carded figures, as well as the Tomb of Doom. I was walking down one of the aisles, and from a distance, I saw, like, a bin with a bunch of jumbo figures sticking out of the top, you know, like the 12-inch X-Men figures. Actually, there's something else that Ryan and Tony and I talked about in the past. And it looked like Xena was hanging out in a hot tub with some of the superheroes. I thought that was kind of funny. Xena is a little odd, missing, like, her skirt piece and stuff. She just seems a little bland. I have the Xena figure from the regular line of that. And I have some of the monsters from the Legendary Journeys of Hercules. Again, that'd be a line that might be fun to do someday, but I just don't have a super huge desire to own it. So unless I stumble upon it cheap or find somebody who can, like, lend it to us, I don't know if we would get into that territory, but so I passed on the Jumbo Xena, but occasionally I do pick up things from those lines. Another thing I picked up from my buddy Chris Lamont was Iron Claw, from G.I. Joe Extreme. Again, another line that I am not crazy collecting, but I do pick guys up here and there because they're relatively inexpensive. You know, they're usually missing their gear and stuff. But maybe someday I'll get enough of them collected up that I would consider doing a video about them. I think I have a different version of Iron Claw already. I know I don't have him in this outfit. Chris also had the Voltron Castle of Lions up for sale. That is a playset that I would kind of like to get someday, but I don't know if I really want to get one that I'm going to have to complete. I mean, if it was just the shell and it looked good on display, that might be good enough. I probably won't have it, like, flipped open with all the stuff, you know. But it's something that I've kind of always wanted, and I just sort of have avoided it because I have a lot of big playsets. But the Castle Lions is definitely cool. Lots of cool stuff at the show. Hasbro, wrestlers, Marvel, DC figures. I looked at a Secret Wars Wolverine that was complete and was in phenomenal condition. I really thought hard about getting him. He was up on the stage part of the show, and I passed. And then when I got home, I saw on Facebook a collector friend of mine happened to pick him up. So that was a great pickup for him. I feel like Daredevil or maybe Iron Man are ones I need from Secret Wars the most. I have a small collection of that line. Somebody had an old as dirt Donald Duck. I mean, look at the character design on this plushie. One of the vendors had the Fisher-Price McDonald's and a castle. Have you ever seen the pink dragon that goes with this castle? It's great. My friend Ed Rents had a ton of Batman stuff in the package for sale. Animated series and Batman Forever era kind of stuff. The Batman Forever Bat Signal Blaster looks like Batman's ready to do some yard work with his leaf blower. Ed also had the White TIE Fighter. That's the original release from Kenner. It's something I want to pick up at some point. I didn't grab it that day, but knowing that he has it, I might keep that in mind for a future show. I picked up a loose Odd Job from James Bond Jr. This is a figure from a short-lived cartoon show, a spin-off of James Bond where his nephew, also named James Bond, fights crime from his private school. And all the bad guys tend to be the bad guys from the original movies, but with a new design. And I'm slowly working on trying to get that whole set. I would love to do an episode at some point. So I picked up Odd Job. Obviously, he's loose, so I don't have any accessories. But I think that episode someday will have a mix of carded, loose complete, and just loose figures in it if I get around to, finishing off that collection. Back to Ben Leach. I didn't notice the first time I walked by, but he had this amazing Thundercats chalkboard for sale, like a kid's slate board kind of thing. Maybe you hang it on your bedroom door to leave messages, keep out and clean your room, right? But it had Lion-O and Mum-Ra on it. It looks really cool. One of the vendors had some weird balls still in the package. You don't see that too often. These are knockoff Mad Balls, but pretty cool. There was a gigantic bendy Roger Rabbit. I can't really even describe how big this thing is. It's not a typical bendy figure that's about the size of your hand. This is like the size of your head. The card back was huge. Really ridiculous. I did not remember that they had made such a large bendy Roger Rabbit, even though I know that there was a bendy Roger Rabbit toy line. Another thing that I saw there that I thought was pretty funny was the kid on the box art to the Captain America accessory playset. Dude, what a cool kid. Not. Other things I picked up at the show, I got a loose Shadow figure. Again, the Shadow is a toy line that we're talking about doing at some point. I have the clear translucent version of the Shadow loose. Now I've got the regular version of him. Ryan has a lot of the stuff carded. It'd be cool if he had his guns, since he has that quick draw action. But, beggars can't be choosers. He did have his cape, and it's in nice shape. And I just thought it would be fun if we do get around to doing this episode to be able to demonstrate, some of the action features and show off the difference between the clear one and the colored one out of the package. I think this guy also came out of Chris's bin of movie toys. Many of you guys know my friend Michael Bro is a huge fan of Alf, and I picked up a little something for him at the show. I checked with him to see if he had it first, because he has a lot of Alf stuff, and he said he did not have it. He didn't really ask how much it was. I don't know if he was curious, but I just decided to snag it for him anyway, and so I texted him a little while later and said happy birthday. I'd give it to him when I saw him next. but I got him Alf sunglasses. These are super cool, right? They're like blue frames. They say Alf on the ridge here in the center. They got little Alf figurines on the side. I had some California raisin glasses much like this as a kid. The card back's got Alf on it. The back of the card actually has a blue and white, like black and white image of Alf, but the image is printed upside down from the card. So it's kind of funny, kind of odd. But these are super tiny kids' glasses. They have a price tag on them from Hills, if you're familiar with that store. I feel like Hills was more popular out towards Pittsburgh, maybe a little less so on this end of the state back in the days. But these were $1.58 originally, everyday low price at Hills. The packaging just has like a picture of Alf. He's not really wearing the glasses, but almost. It's got a little artistic drawing of Alf in the corner. And half underneath the bubble, it says, with safety tested something proof lenses. I don't know whether that means sun rays, ultraviolet. Doesn't quite say. Copyright 1987 Alien Productions. Pretty cool. So I can't wait to give these to Mike. My biggest item that I picked up, because a lot of the figures that I bought today were, inexpensive, loose action figures that nobody really cares that much about. I got kind of an oddball item. This is a G.I. Joe adjacent item. Definitely an oddball thing. It's not actually a G.I. Joe thing. I bought a radio control car. I picked up the radio control Jeep CJ. This is a military-looking vehicle. It's got a little remote control with it. But the reason that this is G.I. Joe adjacent, besides just the fact that it's military, is that the packaging actually shows G.I. Joe figures riding in the Jeep. It's got Cobra Commander and some Cobra Troopers in there. So they didn't even pick the super generic, grunt figure to stick in the Jeep. Nope, they stuck the guys with logos on them in the Jeep. But it does look like the logos may have been removed from them. So I don't know if they used a little acetone. In fact, Cobra Commander doesn't look like he has any paint on his torso. It looks like he doesn't have his collar and stuff painted. It's got the silver on his face mask. He does have his belt and his gloves painted. The Cobra Troopers, they definitely have their suspenders and their masks and stuff painted. But I can't quite tell if they had logos or not. There's sort of like a loop that makes a seatbelt that goes around them that kind of covers it up. So this box is not in perfect shape, but it does look like the toy has never been played with. This says it's from Sears. It's pretty funny. It's pretty weird. People know about this, but it's not like a super widely known thing. It looks like it's never been removed from the package. This is one of those oddball things that diehard G.I. Joe fans know about and are interested in, but it's definitely not something that everybody seems to be aware of. It's a little bit more obscure, and I think it's pretty fun. I hadn't really found anything major yet, and I was trying to avoid coming home with some Disney Christmas toys, because I really don't need those, but they were kind of the coolest thing I'd found so far. So when I stumbled upon the Jeep and realized, oh, this is that Jeep, I had to grab it. It looks like it retailed for $24.99 back in the day. It does say figures not included on the package there. Pretty cool. Holds 3 military figures, includes removable machine gun. Turns left and right. Goes in reverse by radio control. Manual switch on the car for starting, stopping. Fast and slow speeds. Use switch on car. Uses 2 AA batteries and 2 9-volt batteries sold separately. Whoa, 2 9-volts? That's pretty crazy. So I definitely did not expect to be buying an RC car at the toy show. RC cars are definitely not something I collect too much of. I do have a couple. There's definitely an RC car that I would like to own from G.I. Joe, the G.I. Joe Crossfire. That's going to be a tough one. The Crossfire is very expensive, and I'd want to be able to make sure that it worked, I think. So I someday would like to get one. I had it as a kid. It was the only RC car I ever owned that didn't have a wire. In the 80s, a lot of RC cars had a cord going from the car to the remote, and you had to walk with it, which was so lame. I had a lot of those as a kid, but the Crossfire was the one vehicle where it was a true remote control, it would go anywhere. And I played with it even after I kind of was done with G.I. Joes through my teenage years. And I'd build ramps and drive it off. I really was hard on it. And eventually the axle broke and I pitched it. I wish I had saved the controller because that's an expensive part to it that's often missing. I did save a couple of accessories, I think, because I never used to take the missiles outside with it because they would just fall off and I have to go look for them. So I have a few pieces to it, and I think I've picked up a few pieces to it over the years when I've found them inexpensive. That way, maybe someday I could buy it a little bit more affordably because I might be able to find one that works but isn't complete and then just kind of, fix it up. The other thing I have for this episode, I have one new to the collection item that I want to share with you guys. Not collected to the Delaware show at all. Just sort of the most recent thing to come in. It's a Marvel Legends figure, which I really don't buy many Marvel Legends anymore. But I got Rom Space Knight, classic action figure. Very weird action figure, right? He was like a game that you could program in the body of a big robot. You could make it make laser sounds and do lots of different things. The figure was pretty basic in the fact that only his arms really moved. But a cool 70s toy, and he got his own comic book that was part of the Marvel Universe, and we've gotten a 3 3/4 inch version of him at one point, G.I. Joe scaled in a convention set, and now we've got a Marvel Legends version of him. I think this is really cool. I had seen the Crystar one that they had done and picked that one up. I was actually at Target today. This got shipped to me like a week ago. But I was at Target today, and the only ones I saw were several Banshees, Ultimate Miles Morales, and Ultimate Iron Man. So, seems like Rom, Wolverine, and Adam Warlock are selling really well, and Banshee might be the Pegwarmer. This whole line comes with a little miniature comic book as an accessory. It's just a piece of plastic with a sticker on it that makes it look like the first issue of the comic. Kind of meta for an action figure, a comic book action figure to come with their own comic as an accessory, but it's definitely like a cheap accessory they can do because it's one tool for all the figures and they just swap out the stickers. They're not doing a build-apart figure here, but I definitely think there's a lot of value in this character. I don't know for sure how much of him is, part reusage. His arms are very plain. His legs could have been, his boots maybe could have been used on Colossus or somebody else at some point. I'm sure there's some new parts or some reused parts, but definitely his head and his torso or his armor or whatever, definitely new, and his accessories. But I think they did a nice job. It looks like he's got some really good, a good likeness to the character, and it's fun to get some of these vintage toys in a modern update. And, Rom doesn't get a ton of love because he's sort of a standalone toy. There is a whole universe to him with the comics, but we don't really see toys of his bad guys and, supporting characters or anything like that. Rom is kind of standalone when it comes to merchandising. He's got that big old blocky head and the jetpack on him there. He's a good-looking figure. Not a lot of details on his arms, like I mentioned, so there's a good chance they might be reused. But his fingers and everything, I have a feeling they're new because they don't have a lot of detail. The curve of his fingers is insinuated, but not really well sculpted like this line tends to be. So I have a feeling those were kind of new for this. But his feet probably are new because they're kind of very specific. I'm not so sure about his upper leg there with the calf boot top thing. Unsure. Like I said, I'm not a Marvel Legends expert. He's got an open hand. He's got a fist hand. He's got 2 accessory holding hands. I'm going to switch him over to the accessory holding hands since he comes with 2 blasters, so I can arm him up with those things. These big, blocky weapons. I don't know if there's any preference which one they go on. And then he's got a little blast effect here that could fit on either one. And then, of course, he's also got the comic book, which has a little Marvel Legends ad on the back of it, I guess, because usually the back page of a comic book is an ad. Yeah, he can't really hold that, so it's not really his accessory. To me, I want him to be Rom Space Knight, not a guy reading a Marvel comic. So my haul from the Delaware show isn't necessarily the craziest haul I've ever had, but I did get a pretty unusual item in there, and I saw lots of cool stuff. So in the comments down below, let me know what was the most interesting thing I showed off in the video. Was there anything that I didn't buy that you think I should have grabbed? Let me know what the newest thing is in your collection. Do me a favor, hit the like button. That tells YouTube that this is quality content. Subscribe if you haven't done so, but most of all, just thanks for hanging on the peg with me.